Subscribe to Grazia and press on the bell icon.
I don't know what was going through their mind, but I will tell you one thing. In writing this book, a lot of things have been put in perspective, Arman. First is, I was born in 55, and that was 8 years after independence. Just think about it. 8 years after India's independence, I'm born. And I went through school and college very, very early in free India. And women were just sort of coming into their own. Nehru was insisting that women be given an opportunity also. And professional schools were just beginning to admit women. Colleges were admitting women in co-ed schools, even though they were all women's schools. So very early in the time where women were emerging. So I feel fortunate to have been in that part. The lottery of life that I won was the men in my family believed that women should have equal opportunities. That women should not be held back. My grandfather and father would always say, why? I mean, girl, boy, they're both people. As long as they have a brain, as long as they're able to study, let them study as much as they want. We will sacrifice whatever we need to allow them to study. Now, my mother was a product of her desires, which were unfulfilled because she wanted to study and she wasn't given the opportunity, and being part of a society where the girls were married at about 18 or 19 and then went on to have families. So she was torn between the two. So she had one foot on the brake, which is, you know what, you guys are going to get married at 18, but till then you can do what you want. And one foot on the accelerator saying, why don't you guys study, do whatever you want to do? Because I wished I could have done that. So she had this constant confusing approach to everything. But I think the combination of my mother, my father and my grandfather in my family allowed us to do one thing, which is live within the norms of society. At the same time, with that firm footing, fly as much as we want, knowing that there was always time to come back home. There was home to anchor us, home to guide us. So in a way, I feel fortunate having been born at that time in that family. I think it was a sequence of things that sort of helped me build up. Remember in J&J, we were adapting a US product to India. The product already was being sold in the United States. Our job was to bring it to India and launch it, because at the end of the day, women world over are women. They have the same issues when it comes to having periods. And in many ways, what I was doing with Stay Free, I felt very lucky to be on that team, to be the product manager for Stay Free, because it allowed me to do something to alleviate women's burdens. Because it was very personal for me. I was one of those women who struggled through, how do you pay for personal protection? Is that a good expenditure? All of the trials and tribulations of growing up in that time when there wasn't, branded personal protection. I went through all of those horrible situations. So this was very personal. And I felt that women going to school, women going to college, women wanting to be in the professional world, having a job, needed to have the ability to have this level of freedom. So Stay Free became a very personal project for me. And I really got into the details of learning everything I could about it. And it also made me realize how much women struggle to do the simple things in life, because the support system did not exist then for everything. Today's support systems exist for some things, but not everything. And so it taught me a lot, not just about empathy, it taught me about the plight of women, how resilient women are in spite of all of these hurdles, how they power through. I got a newfound respect for all women, not just myself, because look, we're all the privileged few. Think of all those people who work in farms and fields and factories and frontline and doing jobs in retail. I mean, it's tough for them. And so it gave me a newfound appreciation for this sex called women and how awesome they are. let's talk about different kinds of loneliness, because I think I came to the US at a time when there weren't too many support structures for international students. And so, another international student, Mohsen, the Iranian, reached out. And most of the bridges I built were with other international students to start with, and then slowly expanded the circle. And so those days, international students were admitted, but not supported and guided and integrated, helped to integrate. Things have changed now. When you're an immigrant and you come here as a student, as a foreign student, there are a tremendous number of support structures. They give you, a buddy to work with. They figure out ways to have social structures to help you integrate. They teach you how to dress, to talk. There's so much that goes on. So on the one hand, we've now got formal structures to prevent that crushing loneliness. However, if you don't have family, if you don't have friends, if you don't have access to your food, very important. I never realized the importance of food. If you don't have that, loneliness gets amplified. So part of it is your own responsibility to go out and make friends and reach out to people and seek your foods so that you have a touch with where you grew up. But if you don't do that and become a recluse, Arman, it's going to be very difficult. So I think, before you take the first steps to go overseas, you've got to prepare for the fact that you're going to have to put yourself out. You're going to have to build your network. You're going to have to build the support structure you had in the country of your origin, in the new country. And if you don't do that, I don't know whether it's irreversible damage. I think it does cause, a deep longing and loneliness in your heart, which takes a little while to get over. That's a leading question. Arman, I have to tell you, having kids is a humbling experience, because whatever you do, you're never going to get it right. Okay? Even if you're having 2 or 3 kids, for each kid, you have to relearn the book because times have changed and the kids are different. It's a humbling experience. Having kids also makes you bring your heart more to the equation rather than your head. When you're doing a job, it's just intellectually stimulating, you do it. But with kids, there's nothing about the intellect. You've got to throw yourself into it with your heart. You've got to love them for whatever they do. When they use you as a punching bag, you just brush it off and love them all over again. So it's a whole different experience. What it does is allows you to build a thick skin. Because when you're a punching bag with your kids, dads get a hell of a break, but moms don't. Moms tend to be the punching bag. So when you're a punching bag as many times as moms are, you develop a thicker skin. And, what happens at times is sometimes when you're in the office and people throw a tantrum or act in a way that surprises you, you start to look at them as, let's see if my kids did this, how would I act? So it gives you a newfound sensitivity and a sensibility in approaching, executives who act in ways that are not very appropriate and throw tantrums. So in a way, yes, it increases your empathy. It does way more than empathy. It makes I don't know about a leader, it makes you a different person once you have kids. Much more patient, much more tolerant, much more thick-skinned. So many things happen. Arman, in a way, you've asked a question and answered it. So this was the mark of a great journalist, because you've read the book in a very critical way. So I'm in awe of the way you read the book. So thank you. I think you're absolutely right, because if you want a book to have a long shelf life, it's because of the big messages you're imparting, what you want to do, what are the pain points in society you're trying to address. Those books have long shelf life, which is really what I wanted to accomplish with this book, to make it a sort of a blueprint and a framework so that all of us together, along with all the people who are working on it, can work on this issue of supporting young family builders. My experience is that how many ever stories you may have, gossipy stories or any topic, they're sensational and great for a week, but after that, who cares? Once you've read it all. And I'm just not that kind of a person. Because if I have a salacious story to write, I have 10 great stories to write. The book doesn't have room for everything. So I hint on the issues. Clearly, behind every issue, there's people. It's understood. But then I also hint and talk about the good things that happen. So I think this is a book that provided my life as a framework and an arc. But really, what you need to focus on is therefore what. So in a way, what I would say is, if you're going to read this book after every chapter, stop and think about therefore what. And we try to do that in every chapter. There's at least 2 or 3 therefore what's. Surreal is an understatement. I don't think there's a word for it. When many of these guitars I hadn't even seen, it was wrapped and kept in storage, because when I was in PepsiCo, I didn't look at any of those. And so when all my stuff from PepsiCo landed here and I unpacked it and I found all these things, I was in tears at some of the messages some of the musicians wrote, or the signatures, or the fact that they even thought they should give me one of their guitars. Caused more emotion and tears than it did about awe and any other feeling. So we both stood there looking at this and saying, because we had been to many of these shows when they appeared for a Super Bowl or something like that, and we were reflecting on all of these events and grateful that these musicians, great musicians that we recognize as amazing musicians, there's a human behind it. There's a person who's writing a great message. There's a person who appreciated what you did by giving them the opportunity to go on stage and perform for you. And so we were reflecting on each of the musicians, thinking about them, the kind of reception they gave us when we went to one of their events. And we started to get to the human stories behind each of the guitars. But even now, as I look at my office and I look at those guitars every day, 3, 4, 5, 10 times, I can't help thinking about struggling to buy the first guitar and stringing a third-rate guitar and getting massive calluses on the fingers, to now having some of the world's best guitars signed by the world's most iconic people. And I don't play it. I just look at it. Yeah. And so you see, those days you wanted to play the guitar nonstop. You want to stop studying to go play the guitar. Now you just want to look at these works of art. And so, it's like, the juxtaposition of these two is unbelievable. But Arman, it's an amazing life, Arman. That's all I can tell you. I actually believe in the world today, given all the geopolitics, given everything, the Indian story is even more desirable than ever before. India still has a demographic dividend. As one of the youngest countries, large English-speaking population, a highly talented workforce, because of the numbers, even if it's a smaller percentage, it's a highly talented workforce. It's got science and technology, educated people in large numbers, including you, Arman, engineer. And so we've got, as a country, India's got all the requirements that the world needs going forward. But India has to decide how it wants to play in this environment, which is very welcoming of India. Again, it's up to the Indian government, but they have to balance what's good for India, its people, and its economy versus what's good for growth of the world, world trade, whatever. How much protectionism versus nationalism? How much of a consistent framework are we going to have for FDI investment? All of those things are for the Indian government to decide. I mean, I'm not a person to advise the Indian government, but I think the Indian story is intact. I think it has to be married with a consistent framework for investment and direction. If that happens, the Indian story is going to be written in this decade in profound ways. And so I think India has to decide how it wants to play, leveraging its advantages.